Columbia and Barnard students built a Gaza solidarity encampment, and the university sent riot cops to arrest them, destroyed their encampment, and initially put all of their belongings in an alleyway. And now at least 50 Barnard students who were allegedly at the protest have been suspended with no due process. So this is a look at what's actually going on at Columbia University and the 34 hours that precursed President Shafiq sending NYPD riot cops on the Columbia campus for the first time since 1968. At 4 a.m. on April 17th, student protesters set up tents on the East Butler lawn on Columbia University to launch the Gaza Solidarity Encampment, allowing President Shafiq, who has notoriously suppressed the free speech of the Free Palestine movement on campus, a little surprised the morning she wakes up and has to testify to Congress. The student protesters made clear that they plan to occupy that space until the university divests from company ties with Israel and gives complete financial transparency about the school's investment. The student protesters made a public statement saying, "We refuse to accept a world where the death of over 30,000 Palestinians is normal, acceptable, or profitable. We are in complete solidarity with the Palestinian people who resiliently resist decades of occupation, apartheid, and genocide. We remain steadfast in our commitment to see a free Palestine within our lifetime." The students acknowledged that the Gaza Solidarity Encampment is a continuation of the legacy of the 1968 anti-Vietnam and anti-segregation protests that occurred on Columbia's campus. These student protesters were organized to stay as long as needed with shelter, solar panels and charging station, organized food and supplies, and even had built bathroom tents. So by 9:40 that morning, administrative staff started to come to the encampment and threaten student protesters with immediate suspension if they did not leave.
If you do not disperse by 11 a.m., you will be suspended.
Immediate suspension with no due process is against the university's own policies. On the outside perimeter of the encampment, there were a few Zionists that attempted to harass the protesters, but those in the encampment went out of their way to not engage with these people and stayed focused on building community activities like singing songs about their goal of divestment and attending a teach-in session on de-occupation.
The movement was born of an internal mobilization.
The vast majority of students on campus have visibly and publicly supported the Gaza Solidarity Encampment. And when there was a potential police sweep on the first night, hundreds in the community of Columbia and Barnard came to join the protest, even creating a human chain around the encampment. Up with liberation! Day 2 began with 3 Barnard students getting emails that they are suspended and evicted from their housing immediately with no due process.
Who else got suspended? Yeah, wait, so I got suspended and Soph as well. Soph as well? So it's just the 3 of us now.
These 3 just ended up being the first of over 50 of Barnard students suspended in relationship to the encampment, and it should be noted that their suspensions took place 2 hours and 53 minutes before NYPD entered the encampment, and that they are all publicly outspoken student organizers. One of the first 3 suspended is Isra Hersey, who is also the daughter of Ilhan Omar, who in the day previous to her daughter's suspension grilled President Shafiq about her treatment of Free Palestine student protesters. This is a little bit of what Isra had to say shortly after her suspension.
Me and 2 other Barnard students who've actively been seen as lead organizers and been doing interviews have just received notice that we are immediately suspended, or immediately interim suspended, which means that I cannot access my resident hall, I cannot access a dining hall, I cannot access campus, I cannot access any buildings. Yeah, and basically I cannot go to class, I cannot turn in any assignments, I cannot do really anything. And this just comes at you can just tell this is an intimidation tactic. They sent out a warning to every single student here, but they obviously cannot reach every single student. Oh, okay. If the student poses an ongoing threat of disruption or interference with the normal operation of the college, that is the only grounds on which I've been suspended on. Just disruption. So, nothing clear, nothing else explicit.
And since Barnard has made banned on-campus posters for these organizers that are being circulated on the front desks of all Barnard dorms. Context is important, so don't forget that even before this encampment, these student protesters have experienced the banning of their SJP and JBP chapters, doxing from Zionist students and external Zionist groups, ruthless harassment from an on-faculty university professor, a chemical attack from a former IOF soldiers leading to dozens of hospitalizations, illegal surveillance from the university and the NYPD continuously attacking any protests outside their gates, and 5 students being arbitrarily suspended with no due process on April 5th. So an hour and a half later at 12, even with the news of the newest suspensions of the Barnard students, the student protesters attempted to continue on with their programming, which was a rally. but were cut short because they were informed that the NYPD had entered the campus and were about to attack. As Columbia University, specifically President Manu Shafiq, had called in the NYPD to sweep the encampment. So the organized student protesters, ready for this level of repression, made a circle linking arms in the center of their encampment so the whole university could watch their arrest. And as the riot cops started to flood the encampment, so did thousands in the community of Columbia Barnard to support the student protesters. The first few arrests from the NYPD not only included Barnard and Columbia students, but clearly marked legal observers. And before beginning arrests, the NYPD pushed credentialed press to the sidelines, but allowed their uniformed surveillance staff to film on the grass within the encampment. The NYPD not only brought riot cops to arrest the student protesters on their own campus, but also some of the highest ranking and most fascist NYPD, which included the literal killer cop, Chief of Patrol John Shell. So we should all never forget that Columbia University allowed a literal killer cop on their campus to arrest their students for protesting a genocide. Again, I can't stress this. What's on the screen right now is the quote-unquote counterterrorism unit of the NYPD, the Strategic Response Group, arresting student protesters for protesting on their campus. Called for by Columbia University President Manu Shafiq. This is the first time since 1968 that Columbia has called the police to arrest student protesters. After 108 individuals were arrested, the university called in sanitation workers to put the encampment in bins as the riot cops just stood around and then dumped all of their belongings in an alleyway. And then the administration began issuing a new wave of suspensions to anyone who attempted to pick up their belongings. And now over 50 Barnard students who were allegedly at the protest have been suspended and evicted from their housing with no due process, meaning that over 1% of Barnard has been suspended and evicted for protesting against a genocide on their campus. However, minutes after the arrest of the 108, other student protesters jumped over the fence to the west lawn and have continued the Gaza Solidarity encampment there. The Columbia Gaza Solidarity encampment has sparked additional encampments and protests around the country and has proven to be a continuation of the legacy of the 1968 student protests in Columbia. So we should all keep our eyes on Columbia University, demand the suspension charges be dropped, and most importantly, keep talking about and fighting for Palestine.